Particles are one of the things that you can really add some life to a lot of your scenes. You can create smoke, you can create steam, all kinds of really interesting things. And what we need to do is go through a simple workflow to get this going. So let's go to the simulate menu and we're going to go to particles and we're going to start off with the most basic ingredient of a particle. And that's something for the particles to be projected out of, an emitter. Think of an emitter like a bottle of soda. And you shake that bottle and then you uncork it and then you press play and you have these little guys streaming out. Now, by themselves, they don't typically render. So I'll go ahead and show you our render and we have nothing. So what we have to do is start thinking about how we can see these things. And we have to create some kind of atmosphere for them to live in. So I'm going to go to this menu right here and we're going to add in an environment. Now, this will give the particles something to live inside of, but we still have to have something to show the particles. So we're going to go down to our materials manager and we're going to choose create. We're going to go to the shader category and we're going to add something called a pyrocluster and a pyrocluster volume tracer. And you can see this is a representation of the basics of some kind of steam. Now I'm going to go back here again and I'm going to add the volume tracer this time. Now these two guys need to be plugged in to both of these for us to actually see the particles. Once again, if I render, nothing. So the cluster volume tracer is going to go on top of our environment. So just drop that guy right there. And we're going to drag the cluster on top of the emitter. Now, when we render, we should see something. And now we have smoke. Now, if we were to animate this and render it, we would actually get little puffs of smoke. And we can actually manipulate how these guys work. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the pyrocluster itself, this little guy here. And don't forget, when you want to edit these, just click on the tags. And I'll move this up. Now, as you see here, we have the ability to rename this as always. We can look at the tag properties, and we see this is a pyrocluster. We can change the projection. We can change whether we want to mix textures or not, if it's going to be seamless. Currently, it's tiled. We can also go to our coordinates and move it around if we need to. Now, what I want to do here is I want to talk about the differences between clicking on the names of these things and also the tags, because they do different things. So if we click on the emitter itself, we can work with the properties of the emitter. All right, so we can change the birth rate of our particles. For example, I can increase how many we're going to get. And the renderer. So we're looking at how many are going to show up here in our preview and how many are going to render. Be careful with this because it can slow your renders down quite a bit. We can also change the visibility and the start emission. And what this simply means is, let's say you have a 90 frame scene like we have, but you don't want the particles to start immediately. You rather them start somewhere else, like maybe frame 20. You can choose when they're going to be born and when they're going to die. So the start and stop means when they show up and when they fade away. If you want to render that with some kind of variation, you can add a seed number, which of course will randomize how things look in your render. I'm going to double click now on the pyrocluster so we can look at how we can change some of the basics very easily. So let's go down to where it says setting user, and we can see that we have some settings in here. So if you want to make fire, you can choose fire, and it's going to ask you if you're sure. We'll say yes. And if we do a quick test render, you now have fire. Once again, this could take a lot of time depending on how many particles and the quality you have set up. You can always change the color of these guys simply by double clicking on these little stops here. And let's say I want some green fire. Now I have green fire. I can also go over to the age, and I can determine by using these gradients the age of the particles. The illumination, if I want to, I can use illumination. I can change distance effects if I need to by using, once again, gradients. I can put shadows on here so they can cast shadows and also self-shadow. In other words, if you have a big volume of clouds, the clouds themselves will cast shadows on the other clouds. So it's kind of cool. We can also change the transparency. We can also go and change the name of the pyrocluster if that's not going to be descriptive enough. And we can also change the volume. So I can go here and really reduce the volume of this down. As you see here, how it changes. We could change the luminosity, how much it glows. We could change the density of the particle. And I'll do a quick render. And look how cool that looks. Green smoke that rendered much more quickly. Once again, if I want to change things based on presets, I can go where it says settings and simply go to smoke, fireball, steam, and more. And once again, this would be user by default. So that's a look at how to use the simulate particles, the emitters, and how you change the settings.